Hey, I want to get on to Susan Stewart because she is phenomenal and we only have her for so long. So just a little bit about Susan, our guest speaker. Susan's a comedian. She's an author and a speaker, and she spent the past 12 years entertaining and inspiring audiences at events across North America. At our upcoming annual conference for administrative professionals, Susan Stewart has been invited to close the conference with a phenomenally inspiring and hilarious keynote presentation. Where we're not doing the conference today and it's been moved to July 29th, we've invited Susan to come and meet with us for about 20 minutes to give us a little snippet of what she does. Hopefully that'll lure you in to stay connected to us and join us in July. She's gonna present, I think, probably a few ways to increase our resiliency, strengthen our mental health as we navigate through this new reality. So I really just can't wait to, without further ado, introduce you all to comedian, author, speaker, legend, Susan Stewart.
Well, yes. Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that introduction, Scott. I wish I could take you absolutely everywhere with me. Like, I don't know. This is, I've just met you this week. And I know a lot of people online today, know you a lot, know you very well. But I just I want you to be my best friend. I want you to be my opening act everywhere, whether it's virtual or when we can take the stage again. You need to be my opener. You're hilarious, and I've really enjoyed the levity, the light that you shine. You shine forth to all. So it's just been a joy to get to know you, and I appreciate the invitation from Spark Conferences, and of course, the invitation from you. I also just thank you guys for giving me a reason to exist today, and a reason to put on makeup. Like I am showered, my hair is done, I have makeup on. Look at me, I got a blazer. Like, this is amazing. I haven't felt this put together in, I don't know, 6 weeks. So this is very exciting for me. Anyway, I also would like to start off by, again, echoing what Scott said earlier. And I send my love, my wishes, my light out to Eastern Canada in this very challenging week as Nova Scotia just experienced that tragedy on top of this challenging time. So from me to you, my heartfelt wishes and compassion. And I also want to wish everybody a happy Administrative Professionals Day. Woohoo! Let's clap. Let's clap for that again.
Yay!
Yay! Yay! Yay! So again, Scott, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And
my pleasure.
Thank you. But if there is anyone sitting at home right now thinking to themselves, so what's with the Ellen DeGeneres knockoff as our guest on Zoom right now? If anyone is just kind of not too sure about my actual identity, I think I will start things off by reintroducing myself. My name is Susan Stewart. I am a comedian, an author, and a speaker. I live in Toronto, but I come in peace. And being a comedian, I'm always trying to see the lighter side of life. And I'm passionate about helping people see the lighter side of life because, given all of the adversity that we face and how often things don't go according to plan, it can be very easy to take things too seriously, which often just creates a lot of stress. So in light of all of the changes and challenges that come our way, I think, now more than ever, it's really important for us to see the humor in things and have a positive outlook because, let's admit it, life is no fairy tale. If you lose your shoe at midnight, that just means you're drunk. Thank you, Scott. If you could laugh in all the right spots, that would be helpful. Anyway.
I will. Very naturally.
Yeah, thank you. As we have experienced in many ways over the last few weeks, life can be really hard sometimes. I don't know about you, but I've thought about running away way more as an adult than I did as a kid. And I know that we would love to run away right about now. So we have been reminded once again that life can throw you a curveball at any given moment, right? Like there we were in January thinking, this is my year. And then there we were in mid-March thinking, am I gonna have to start wiping my behind with coffee filters? You know, and what should I wear to the living room? And then we started making banana bread, right?
It was a movement.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure I've heard the phrases social distancing and physical distancing more than I've heard my own name my entire life. There's no getting around it. This quarantining is tough. Like I'm a homebody, but damn, I did like going out one or two places. I don't know about you, but my quarantine state of mind can be summarized by having 3 solid days where I feel like I'm like getting the hang of it. I'm feeling pretty well adjusted. Yeah. Followed by a sudden unexpected dip into what I call the hell zone, which leaves me staring out the window for someone to walk by and snuggling my shoes because I miss them so much. I don't know if there's anyone else out there numbing their pain with food. Scott, I don't know.
You could see the chair sitting in right now. It's wider than it was 3 months ago.
Yeah. Yesterday, I took a nap to stop eating. Anyway, as I see it, here's how I see it. Half of us, right? Half of us, because lots of people are doing their home workouts, right? I see them on Instagram and Facebook, right? Half of us are going to come out of this like in the best shape of our lives, speaking a foreign language fluently. And the other half of us are going to come out of this 20 pounds heavier with a drinking problem. I mean, it's going to go either way. And so I ask everyone right now to consider, what team will you be on? Now, here's something I haven't heard from the being a parent is the greatest joy of my life crowd for quite a while. Now, you folks out there working from home while homeschooling your children, I can only assume that right now you're thinking long and hard about where you're going to be shipping your children for at least a couple months when this is all said and done. At least. And you parents out there will probably agree with me that if there is, like, just say, if there is a baby boom in like 8 months, it will be because of couples who don't have children yet, right? Like, that is definitely a situation. But like everyone else, I can't wait for things to return to normal so I can get back to canceling my plans and isolating on my own terms. Yeah, I gotta laugh. Well, actually, you don't gotta laugh because I'm not the boss of you. It's just that you always can. It's always an option. That's the freedom of choice we were all born with, right? Like, I mean, that's the truth about, you know, our humanity. Like, we were all born free. Like, we're always free to choose how we want to perceive, interpret, respond to our circumstances. I mean, when you have those negative thoughts playing out in your mind, like you do, you always have the freedom to like ditch them and replace them with a new set of thoughts that strengthen you rather than weaken you as you face this new reality with its unique challenges. So let me be very clear. I'm not here to talk about ridding your brain of negative thoughts. I actually find it really frustrating when the self-improvement movement, the self-help world, the personal growth world sends this message to people to stop thinking negative thoughts. I get frustrated with that because it's not realistic. Our brains are hardwired for negativity because our brains are still wired the same way they were originally wired back in our caveman and cavewoman beginnings, when stress was a response to life-threatening situations. So our brains were trained. They were wired to focus on the worst case scenario and the doom and gloom because simply that helped us survive. So I am here on a mission to take the shame away and say that negative thoughts are natural and therefore inevitable. And the realistic goal that we all have then is to just manage those negative thoughts by just simply being aware of them and then choosing not to get all, drawn into them. choosing not to, get all caught up in them and then allow them to, take over our brain and tip us into that downward spiral, leaving us sitting there at the bottom of the rabbit hole. So that's the first message I have for everyone today. Negative thoughts are natural. There's no shame. No. And with that truth in mind, I'm here to offer up the practice of just noticing your negative thoughts and then replacing those thoughts with just another story or another set of thoughts that are just simply far more uplifting. Again, I'll say it. Whatever we're thinking, it's either going to give us strength or it's going to weaken us. Every thought we create either strengthens you or weakens you. So we always have that freedom of choice. We can catch ourselves in the act, of getting caught up in that negative story, ditching that story, and replacing it with something that is just far more uplifting. So this practice, I think, is a worthy endeavor, because when we get drawn into something negative, like worry, rumination, or catastrophizing, what happens is we end up doubling or tripling the size of the whatever it is that we're dealing with, a change or a challenge. It goes from being this size to, something massive. And let's admit it, it's really tough to see the lighter side of life, like what's funny or what's positive, when this huge thing is blocking your entire view. Okay. So now on to providing those more uplifting thoughts to replace those natural and inevitable negative ones that our brains create.
Wait, let me get a pen.
Okay, yes, Scott, you're going to take some notes. It's all good. I'm going to summarize it at the end too.
Okay, good.
But I have 3 ideas to share with you guys today. We don't have a lot of time, and I don't think anybody has the capacity to take it more than that. Just 3 ideas. Okay, so my first idea is to ditch that inner critic. I mean, the inner critic's going to show up. That's called our ego. That's just another way our brain is wired to protect us. But when you kind of start getting drawn in or caught up into the chirping of that inner critic, you have that freedom of choice, right? To ditch it, ditch that negative story coming from the inner critic, and choosing to be compassionate and kind to yourself. This situation that we are in is what author Brené Brown, I don't know if anyone out there knows Brené Brown. Scott, do you know Brené Brown?
I do. I love her. Hello, I'm an Oprah baby. I know.
There you go. Yeah. So if anyone's interested to do a little personal growth, self-help exploration during this time, I highly, highly recommend the work of Brené Brown. I think she's one of the most important voices of our time. So I was listening to a podcast. She has a new podcast, and I highly recommend it. It's called Unlocking Us. I don't know if you're into podcasts, but this is good stuff. So I was listening to one of her first episodes because she launched it just recently. And she called this time, this global pandemic, this time of isolation, quarantining, social distancing, she called it an FFT, a freaky first time. Well, actually, she uses another F word at the beginning, but I'm going to keep things classy here today. So every FFT, every freaky first time, something unprecedented, something that we have never dealt with before, always naturally presents a huge learning curve. Let's admit it, you've never done this before, and I haven't either. I mean, this whole global pandemic, isolation lifestyle stuff is uncharted territory for us all. And it's important to call that truth out. This is what the psychology world calls normalizing. I don't know if anyone's in therapy, but I learned that word in therapy. So it's called normalizing. When we call something out for what it is, the situation loses power, and then we gain power. So let's call it out, guys. This is a freaky first time. And how are we to know, really, how are we to know how to nail this, right? I mean, we really do have to manage our expectations regarding, killing it on all angles, right? Like like I said, nailing it, and maybe managing our expectations in terms of perfection. I don't know if anyone else out there deals with that, but yes, we must manage our expectations. Okay, so for example, I don't know if there's anyone out there right now caught up in a wee bit of self-loathing because you're expecting to be living your best quarantine life. But in reality, you haven't worn pants with a zipper in over a month, and you only shower on the weekends. Like if that's the case, or even days, I don't know. If that's the case, please go easy on yourself. Like, isn't it amazing that we'll say things to ourselves that we wouldn't dream of saying to someone else? Like, can you imagine turning to a person, when you're out in public, can you imagine turning to a person saying, "You're such a loser"? Okay, I know some of you can because there's a few in every crowd, but right? Like that's, we are so hard on ourselves. And that is because we carry around a lot of expectations, well, for ourselves and also the world around us. So my question is, what were you expecting in this freaky first time? Now, what's kind of cool is you can kind of catch yourself caught up in an expectation during this time and well beyond. Anytime you're kind of caught up in an expectation for yourself or maybe of another person or the world around you, you tend to use the word should. You think the word should. You say the word should, right? This should, that should, I should, we should. You ever had a bad case of the shoulds? Yeah. So maybe over the last month of isolation, you have said, well, with all this time at home, I should be cooking gourmet meals, or I should be working out at least 5 days a week, or my closets and drawers should look like Marie Kondo lives here. You might be thinking that you should be living your best quarantine life, and that's just simply a negative story born out of expectation. So see if you can catch yourself. Just catch yourself chasing perfection, getting all caught up in an expectation of yourself and replacing it, right? Exercising your freedom of choice, replacing it with kindness and compassion for yourself. Okay. Because you have never experienced anything like this before. It's tough to see the lighter side of life when you're standing there shooting yourself.
Wow.
So my second idea, thanks for that, Scott. I really do appreciate a little response.
I love insight. God, it's so good.
All right. My second idea is to ditch your negative predictions of the future and then replace it with the truth, which is the future is unknown. Now, I'm going to quote author Brene Brown again. I'm on a Brene Brown train. So Brene Brown says, in the absence of data, we tell ourselves stories. So here's a situation we're dealing with. We don't know how long it will be before we return to normal. And we don't know the sociological and economic impact of this pandemic. And we don't know how it will shape our personal and professional lives. We just don't know. So in the absence of this data, here's what our brain is likely doing. Like if you're a human being right now, your brain's probably doing this right now. It's probably predicting negative outcomes because, again, back in our caveman and cavewoman times, assuming the rustling in the bushes was a saber-toothed tiger helped us to survive. So again, we're hardwired to the worst case scenario and that doom and gloom because back in the day, that helped us to survive. Now, it's important to note that being aware and being cautious is very important right now. And heck, anytime. But believing that worst case scenario playing out in your brain, well, that's really just going to produce a lot of stress and anxiety. So beware of negative fortune telling. This is what I call negative fortune telling, right? Like when we start predicting negative outcomes, that's like we're getting out our big old crystal ball. And then of course, sharing the worst case scenarios and doom and gloom. Perhaps you've witnessed somebody at work doing this negative fortune telling. Let's go back to 6 weeks ago or back further than that when you were, actually working, in the office. I don't know if you witnessed somebody doing this negative fortune telling. Like maybe somebody recently, had come up to you in the office and said, I know exactly how this is going to go and it ain't going to be pretty, right? Like there it is. There's the negative fortune telling. Now, I'll let you in on a little part of my journey right now. And I'll tell you that I actually, for a while, I quit stand-up comedy and I I worked in a human resources office in the Ontario government.
Wow.
Yeah, I went from stand-up comedy to sit-down comedy. There we go. Thanks, Scott. Okay, I tell you this. Yeah, so I do know office life quite well.
You speak that language.
Yeah, I was there with my loafers on. And I tell you this because I vividly remember some of the negative fortune telling that would go on in the office. Like pretty much every Monday morning, one of our managers would scurry around the office all stressed out saying, this week is going to be insane. Like, thank you, Denise, for your fine leadership, right? And your secondhand stress. So nothing about that was true, right? It was Monday morning. There was no way that Denise would know how the week was going to go unless she was from the future and she had come back to warn us. So this was a made up story that Denise was believing to be 100% true. And so emphatic about its truth that then she shared her secondhand stress with all of us. Wow. I also remember that pretty much every Friday morning, one of my colleagues, bless her heart, she would sit there at her desk, all stressed out, typing away, saying, I am never going to get all this done by the end of the day. I'm going to have to work all weekend. Right? And it was like 9 a.m. I'm like, girl, give yourself a shot. Right? I'm like, you don't know how great you can be today. So this negative fortune telling, it's definitely a source of stress, but it's also a form of limited thinking. You know, challenge your limited thinking about your capacity, whether it's about getting work done, you know, by the end of the day, or just overcoming a challenge, or just dealing with this big situation we're dealing with. Just challenge your limited thinking about your strength, about your resiliency, just your capacity to handle it. I think we have very limited thinking about what we can really handle, what we can do. And pretty much every day in that office, somebody would come up to me and say, this meeting is going to be a total waste of time. Now that one usually ended up to be true. But the rest of it, right? Just a lot of made up stuff.
That secondhand stress is unbelievable.
Yeah, and that's it. It's just, the rest of it was just, I've got this negative prediction. I believe it to be true. And then of course, I'm going to dish it out to everybody else in the office. Thank you. So again, our brain is going to do this naturally. I'm not sitting here shaming you for doing negative fortune telling, because you probably are sitting there going, uh-oh, I do that sometimes. Sure, I do too. We're hardwired to. So the practice again is just to catch yourself, when you're got out that big crystal ball, and then ditch that prediction and replace it with the truth. Because you don't know what's going to happen, anything is possible. Because you don't know what's going to happen, it's still all up for grabs. And then maybe you take that courageous step to live in the mystery. It does take courage to live in the mystery. I do believe sometimes we believe these predictions to be true because it gives us that false sense of certainty. Even though we've made it up, for some reason, it's comfortable because at least it's something. And the third final idea that I have for you today, if you're still there. The third idea.
Every word.
Thanks, Scott. The third idea I have is to ditch that story that you might be telling yourself that you're dealing with a major setback, because that's just depressing and not true. I'm going to offer you, and maybe you're going to think this is like a little bit schmaltzy self-help talk, but I'm going to say it anyway because I kind of like it. What about replacing setback with plot twist? I've been working with a business life coach for several months now. Her name's Lucy. And in one of our early sessions, I was going on and on, with this negative energy and telling her about, something, really, really tough and wallowing in this kind of despair or whatever, I was just kind of going on as we do. And she stopped at one point in the session and she just smiled at me and she was like, "Ah, what an interesting plot twist." I was like, well, I guess you could see it that way. And ever since that session, I've kind of taken that on now, just to kind of see it as a plot twist. We might easily perceive changes and challenges as setbacks. I know that. I know that's a very common annoying feature of our brain. But when you think about it, it's impossible to go backwards in life. It might not be the direct route that we want. There are many twists and turns that detour us and send us in a different direction. But when you think about it, like, we're always moving forward because we're always learning and growing. Now, before you go thinking I'm on some kind of good drugs or doing some kind of like Pollyanna act here, I will
No,
share.
girl, you just had a shower.
Right.
Oh, shower and makeup.
That's right. Like, just in case you might be thinking, okay, this is when it's getting a little woo-woo and she's making stuff up. I will share with you that there's a new area of study in psychology called post-traumatic growth. I'll say it again, post-traumatic growth, which is a term describing the proven positive growth occurring out of adversity or trauma. It's been proven that people who experience setbacks, a significant adversity or even trauma, it's been proven that they gain something profound, such as a greater appreciation of life, stronger relationships, reorganized priorities, new possibilities are presented, a spiritual awakening or a feeling of connection to something bigger than themselves, or a higher level of mental toughness. For example, people think, if I got through that, I can get through this. So I'm going to say those things again for everybody and give you a chance to think of maybe the ones you are gaining during this profound change. So here we go. Have you gained a greater appreciation for life? Are some of your relationships actually stronger? Have you reorganized your priorities? Have new possibilities been presented to you? Have you had some kind of spiritual awakening, or as Oprah would say, aha moment? Or do you feel connected to something bigger than yourself right now? And would you say that you will have a higher level of mental toughness when all is said and done? I mean, if you got through this, you can probably get through that. So when facing change, we focus often on what we have lost or what we are losing, when we could, again, our freedom of choice, right? We could be focusing on what there is to gain. The environmentalists are gaining an amazing opportunity to collect data that they could have never received any other way. I mean, apparently, they can see the Himalayan mountains now in India.
Wow.
Because of the lack of pollution, because of the lack of activity. It's probably not realistic to think that, that's going to remain the same when all is said and done. But just the fact that there is the evidence, the data, and I know there's many other environmental shifts that have occurred. You've probably seen them on Facebook. I know there's lions lying about in the roads, where safaris usually take place. Tourists are usually driving around. Now they're sunbathing, just lying about, having a day on the road. It's just amazing that way. So here's the thing. I find curiosity to be a great healer of stress. Just when you kind of drop out of the wishing it were to be different and you just got curious about it. I know I try to do that a lot in my life. Have you considered what you are personally and professionally gaining right now? I mean, I'm going to say it. I believe we're all gaining an opportunity to experience what I call stillness, right? And in this stillness, because we don't have the usual distractions and diversions. So right now in this stillness, we have this opportunity to assess, evaluate our habits, our philosophies, our behaviors, which, I mean, I think ultimately we've been given this opportunity to, and I think, Scott, you use this word in your opening remarks. This is a big reset. We are in a reset. And so the question that I have for you, Scott, and everybody else on this call, what parts of this new homebound lifestyle are you actually interested in taking with you after all this is said and done? I know for me, I realize how much money I can save by maybe not going out to eat as much as I know we need to get out there and support the restaurants. I also am realizing just how economical I can be by cooking more at home and reducing, some other, unnecessary expenses. I'm living a very simple life right now. And it's not to say that I want to, live as simply as this going forward. but I am interested in maybe more stillness, maybe a bit more of a simple lifestyle. I've definitely been inspired by this pause. We will come out of this pandemic different people. And that's the gift of the storms we face in life. I mean, when you think about it, that is the gift of change, right? This is the major gift of change. You have never had to, nor will you ever have to, sit down and rack your brain trying to come up with a way to experience personal transformation. Like, man, I got to come up with a way to evolve, has said no one ever. Right? It just happens by the process of life itself. So the next time you start going on about this great setback happening in your life, remember, you can ditch that negative story, a rather depressing story, and replace it with a plot twist.
Ditch and replace.
Ditch and replace, Scott.
Yeah, got it.
And this plot twist, I mean, really, this plot twist, I think it is an accurate term, because really we're just being placed on a new path that we just didn't know we were meant to take. So here is the summary. When you start shooting yourself and beating yourself up because you have this expectation to be living your best quarantine life, remember that first truth. Remember what Brene Brown said in that podcast. This is a freaky first time. You have never done this before. None of us have. So please, go easy on yourself. And when you get out your crystal ball and start predicting a negative future, please remember the truth. It's all unknown. We really have no idea. We have no idea the impact this will have. We just don't. We don't know what our new reality looks like, which means it's still all up for grabs. And when you think or say the word setback, replace it with plot twist, because we are all on our own journeys and the road is one way. So in closing, I will say that exercising our freedom of choice is what can help us to not take our negative thoughts too seriously. You know, you'll often hear this in life when people say, well, don't take things too seriously. And like, what does that really mean? Don't take things too seriously. So I've come up with this idea. When we don't take things too seriously, we're not taking our negative thoughts about things too seriously. We're not getting caught up. We're not getting drawn into that, drama, allowing that negative narrative to take over our brain and tip us into that downward spiral, leaving us, sitting there at the bottom of the rabbit hole. So that's the practice that I offer, to you guys today is, when stress sets in, see if you can normalize it. Call it out for what it is. Label what's going on in your brain, what you're caught up in. Hey, there's me worrying. Whoop, there's me ruminating. There's me catastrophizing. There's me obsessing. There's me negative fortune telling. This is the practice of being aware of when you're not aware. I know, it sounds a little kooky. I'll say it again. It's the practice of being aware of when you're not aware. So when you name it, you take its power away. You deflate the situation back to its original size. This practice is about containing the size of the changes and challenges that we're facing, rather than doubling or tripling the size of the changes and challenges that we're facing. And in doing that, there's room to see the lighter side of life. Thank you.
I love that, Susan.